Hi and welcome back. Let's make our first request with AO-HTTP. Here in this project, I'm just going to create a new file just for testing AO-HTTP, and it's going to be called async request.py. By the way, the code for this is linked in each lecture and is available, maybe in a slightly different setup, but nonetheless, there's going to be a samples folder for you to look at these codes that we're going to write over these lectures. And then, of course, at the end as well, when we turn the full thing into an asynchronous scraper, the full code is available as well. So in order to make our first web request, the first thing we need to do is, of course, to install AO-HTTP. Now, soon we're going to look at how to handle dependencies in Python projects a bit better. But for now, we're going to stick with installing things directly in PyCharm by doing, going over to our project interpreter, and there with the plus installing AO-HTTP. The current version that I'm using is 3.0.5. This may be different when you're using it, but don't worry. If there are any breaking changes, we will re-record with a new version soon. So if you install this and you notice that things don't work quite the way you expect, just say in the course Q&A, and we will re-record as soon as possible. Okay, just install this package, and this is all we need to install. So when that's installed, you can close this window, and we can begin using it. So that's it, done. We can press OK, and now we can import AO-HTTP. So let's first start with fetching a single page. The first thing we need to do is create the coroutine. Remember, this is like a generator that can suspend and resume their execution at any time by using a wait. So we're going to do async def fetch page, and what we're going to pass to this function is the URL that we want to fetch. Now the next thing we do is we must tell AO-HTTP to create a client session. A client session just essentially creates a bunch of connections and puts them in a pool, pretty much like a thread pool, except it's a connection pool, so that we can reuse them without having to create new connections each time. So what we're going to do is a bit of a new bit of syntax, async with AO-HTTP.client session as session. All that's happening here is we are doing a normal context manager. We're creating this new client session, which is a connection pool and also a cookie storage. We're going to talk more about that soon. We're calling it session, but because it's async, what happens in an async in an async context manager is that it can have a yield in the enter or in the exit methods or in both. So essentially, it's just a way of potentially suspending the execution of the context manager when it starts or suspending it when it ends and resuming it. Just adds like a new point where it can suspend and resume, just in case you want to do something a bit heavy duty inside the context manager. It allows you to suspend and resume at the start or at the end of the context manager. That's the only difference with the normal context manager and the async context manager. For more information about this, instead of enter and exit, the new methods are aenter and aexit. Okay? We're not going to get into too much depth about creating your own asynchronous context managers. Just know that if you want to create an asynchronous context manager where you can do an await or a yield inside it, you have to use aenter and aexit instead of enter and exit. Nonetheless, just a bit of an aside there. Then we're going to do async with session.get, and we're going to get the URL as response. And then we're going to return the response status code. This can be our first task. This is a coroutine that first of all creates a session. Then it sort of gets the URL we passed in, it asks the server for the contents, calls it response, and then returns the response status. But of course, before returning the response status, it can potentially be suspended here or here, when it starts or when it ends. So when we can, for example, get the URL or send the request to the server and then suspend while we wait for data to come back.